So hello, my name is Mike Cardis from Organization Development by Mike Cardis, and this is the webinar on changing your habits through your actions. So this is going to walk through a tool and a series of methods that I use and have developed in one-on-one coaching with executives, managers, and folks at all levels of organizations to look at developing consistent, small daily checkbacks on your actions to identify what we call amplifiers and dampeners. So we're going to walk through number one, how do you identify what things you value? And by values, I mean things that you put energy and time towards. Then from those values, figure out how do you transfer those values into, did I do my best or level of effort statements? From those level of effort statements, I'll share with you a framework or a tool that I use with my coaching clients and personally to kind of have a check back piece. So as I said in the beginning, this is normally when I do consulting or coaching, I take an organizational perspective, meaning I look at the whole organization and the environment and try to figure out how can the environment support you to be more conducive inside your workplace. This is a different approach. This is saying from the individual perspective, what you are currently doing, how can you make the best of your own individual choices to ensure you're filling your values and you're doing the things you want to do inside your environment. So normally I take a different approach. When I think of organizations, I take the outside in. With this process, though, it's different. From this, we're kind of going from what do you want to achieve? How can you put effort towards the things you want to achieve? And how do you create a consistent way to be mindful and to check back on those things? So with that, I'm going to go to shared screen. Go through the PowerPoint. So again, like I said, I'm Mike Cardis. I'm going to share the slides with you and you'll have all the information. Additionally, to the majority of you, I emailed out last night 2 pages that went through thinking about your values and ways to frame it. I sent that because I thought it'd be helpful prior to the webinar to have the content. If you didn't complete it, it's totally okay. Don't worry about it. You'll have time to figure it out later. So to begin with, this slide is what we think about. And so a lot of times we use the word complex adaptive systems or human adaptive systems. And what that means is that you as a person tend to interact in your environment in different ways. You have what we call in humans, you have the 3 I's, right? You have identity, who am I as a person? You have intention, and in this situation, what is my intention I wish to achieve behind the process? And you have intelligence, meaning what smarts and skills do I have? So identity, who am I? Intention, what do I intend to do based upon my goals and my environment and current needs? And intelligence is also that base intelligence of what are my natural skills allow me to do in the environment. So it's messy. And we say it's complex and adaptive because the way you interplay off your environment and the way the environment interplays off you can create negative and positive sort of responses to the work you're trying to do. So the entire point behind this is to kind of help you identify what parts do I want to work on to amplify inside my identity, intelligence, and intention to make louder to achieve my values, and what do I have to minimize or make quieter or dampen to also achieve my values. So this is a way of kind of what I say is sort of comparing yourself to yesterday's version. In some ways, as we're creating the comparison metric and the steps you're going to go through, it'll show you looking at a long-term thing. Are you doing better than yesterday or worse than yesterday? And those of you who mentioned early on the solution focused, in some way, this is sort of saying, what concrete things can I do the next day to be thoughtful about these? And we recognize there has to be a mindful practice. And mindful, I don't necessarily mean like meditation and deep mindfulness. I just mean a way to kind of catch yourself in the action, figuring out this is what I want to achieve or not achieve. So inside here, we think about these 2 different parts. And these are what we call polarities. So if anyone's familiar with something called Polarity Management, it's a good book. It talks about inside every human system, there are 2 paradoxes of things we kind of work with. So on the one end, you have inside your behavior and values, things you want to create. So things you want to create are what are new things I want to put forward? What are things I want to make happen in my environment? If I'm thinking about who I am in the workplace or in my sales calls or with my manager or with my teams, what things do I want to create or develop new parts on? On the opposite end of that is what I want to eliminate or get rid of. What sort of things, negative interactions, behaviors, process do I want to do less of or eliminate? The reason we put both these here is that you gotta be thoughtful about this. Under periods of tension or stress, which we're under right now due to COVID-19, and then we have some large racial and social tensions going on that were caused by the environment, we see that if we can think about as an individual, what behaviors do I want to create, what do I want to eliminate, it's the time to make change. Additionally, one word we've been saying is that for innovation to happen inside yourself, you got to figure out what things do I currently got I want to do more of. So this is thinking about when you're going through your process of who you are, we have to start thinking about what is of value to us. And what is the value of you and the organization and the folks you work with. Oftentimes, this is where we're going to get to the part of self-awareness, is that there is a thought that self-awareness happens by being aware of yourself. And that makes sense. There's a good book, and I'll show you the book at the end, by a woman named Tasha Eurich, E-U-R-I-C-H, called Insight, where she tried to find what she calls self-awareness unicorns. And in her research, she found that 9 to 10% of the population are actually self-aware enough to recognize these things. And so one thing she says is you have to kind of pull yourself, hence the image, out of your own sort of self-thoughts and get feedback from those who are outside of you. And looking at those who are outside of you, you have to start thinking about, how do I get critical feedback? So I'm going to show you a slide coming up on trying to figure out, if you're looking at people on the outside, how do I capture critical feedback? We call them caring critics, to give me feedback on my behaviors and actions. And this is because oftentimes you kind of get stuck. So as you're looking at this image here, I'll ask you if you want to, just feel free to write in the chat box. As you're looking at the image here, what do you see? Like, what's the first thing you know is inside the image? And just keep looking at the image and be thoughtful of, as we're going through this, the way to create some self-awareness or to change your existing habits is you have to shift your perspective on things. And a perspective shift will come from usually an outside source impacting you strongly. So either a loved one dies, you get a new job, suddenly you go through a major life change, you're stuck at home, working at home, and you have kids and a wife at home trying to make everything work. Another way that a large shift happens where you look for outside feedback is suddenly a major client or a process changes. So as you're looking at this image, the first thing folks usually see is a room. So you see there's architectural drawings here. People usually see a door, a TV, a window, right? A window, this. Then normally I'll say to somebody, do you see the elephant? And then as they're looking at the picture, some folks begin to see the elephants. And if you look, this is also an elephant. So the elephant here is the elephant's trunk. Here's the elephant's eye, the elephant's ears. If you see the foot of the elephant, the toes, the elephant's foot, the toes, like the saddle on an elephant. And inside this image, in my mind, it's a strong metaphor to say that we create the room we live in. So the whole analogy of the elephant in the room is that by looking at yourself internally, you're creating your own elephant or your own challenge inside the room. So you need to think outside the process and get different perspectives on how this happens. And the perspectives will help you create change in the process. So we have to think about this. And overall, one thing that I keep thinking about is inside teams or organizations, we create two different polarities or two ways to look at things. Number one is doing it yourself. So is there sufficient tools and resources for me to get the work done myself, to make progress, to figure things out? But additionally, on top of yourself, we found there also has to be a sufficiently high level of accountability. Somebody inside the organization or somebody besides you that holds you accountable for the things that you want to do. So we found that if we have low accountability, yet high desire for change, people may change, but it takes a lot of energy. If we have high accountability, high support from others in your environments, and high desire to change, normally things will take place. But the challenge is, how do we think through what those parts are? And the side here, these are questions that typically I use to have folks start thinking about this. And when I say values, I mean values in sort of a bit of a non-traditional way. So we can separate into values and goals. So I think goals are things that are achievable. So those of you who have goals, we have SMART goals. I use an acronym called QQTR, quality, quantity, time frame, resources. Goals are things that can be achieved. So the achievable goal might be close 5 new clients by the end of the quarter. A goal might be lose 13 pounds by the end of next month. Goals are achievable and they're set time frames and they're relatively clear. A goal differs from a value in the following way. We say values are vectors. So values are things that you care about. So I, for example, value experiential learning and hands-on processes. I also value spending time with my family. I value open discussions and the ability to openly debate and to argue with people. Those are different than goals. So one thing you want to start thinking about as you go through this process is, what are your values or hopes? And if we can begin to identify what your values and hopes are, then we can create small check back metrics to see how those are lining up. So we can realize this is not a goal-driven process. I like goals, but on the other end, I've been much more thoughtful about, especially in this time and for the past several years, if I say I value these things, am I actually doing these things? Or if I get feedback from folks that the way I'm acting or the way I'm responding is not aligned with my values, how do I change that? So these are some questions that typically we work through to figure out what are your values or hopes. And I encourage you to do these, write them down, walk through them several times. First part is, what are your best hopes? This is a very open and solution focused. Solution focused is a process, it's a question. And we say, what are your best hopes? And so you may just think about, so I'd say, hey, we're working together. I'm coaching you one-on-one. I'd say, hey, we're together for the next 3 to 5 months. What are your best hopes from our talking together? And from the hopes, you're able to begin to identify what do you want to have happen. And from hopes, you're pulling out what you value, because I'm hearing your words. When your closest friend notices, what will your closest friend notice is different about you when you realize these hopes? So that earlier image of the gentleman with his head up his butt, this is saying, how will other folks notice you achieving these hopes or these values? So if I say, for example, my hope is to be better at delegating tasks to employees, or my hope is to be able to close more deals, or my hope is to be able to listen more effectively to my employees, how will a friend or somebody else see you doing this? Now you're framing other focus. You're breaking out that spotlight of your own self to kind of say, how will folks see me doing this? This is a scaling question on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being you can describe your hopes and 1 being the opposite. Where are you on this scale? The reason behind this, it helps you figure out and become clearer on, what are my values? What sort of things do I think are trajectories of things that stand clear to me that I want to work on, that are important to me to be more effective inside my environment, to be a better husband, a better employee, just whatever you want to be. The scaling question puts a number to it. The important part about the scaling question, as you're going through this yourself or asking a friend about this, is any number you choose is a good number. Right, so if someone says a 2, you don't want to go, oh, a 2, that kind of sucks. You want to say a 2, that's relatively good. And you're figuring out where you are on this scale. It'll help you pull out what you value. What's currently happening that supports the number you chose. So here you're pulling out inside your change methodology, or inside what you want to have happen. You figured out what your hopes are, what some values are. You figured out how other folks will see you living these things, so you're actualizing them. You figured out where you might be on the scale as far as 1 to 10, 4, 5, 6. And now you're saying, what are you doing already that's getting you there? So you see in the model I'm going to share later, we have things to preserve and accept. So what things are you currently doing you want to do more of? Hence that amplify and dampen process. Because all that change is, especially personally in organizations, is just a mixture of making certain things louder and certain things quieter. And you're always playing that game. In the past, how have you been successful in making tough choices? What is different about those times? This is an efficacy question, because as you're going through change, you're going to have tough choices to make and hard things to do. And here you're trying to figure out and identify what's been successful in those examples. And if we were working one-on-one together, I'd spend a lot of time on this. So recently I was talking to a client probably 3 days ago, and he was explaining to me that his mother passed away almost 2 months ago. It was really devastating to him. And we were talking about identifying his values. We're working on a coaching. He runs a relatively large organization. He's working through some life changes now. And while I'm not a therapist, I don't pretend to be a therapist. We spent a lot of time on this question. And he said, hey, when his mother passed away, he made some tough choices. And I asked him, I said, what was different about that time? From those tough choices, what did you see and recognize in yourself you want to do more of? From those tough decisions, what did it show you about your values and what you want to kind of focus on going forward? So you're finding, and we all know that in the past, you've had tough things that have happened to you. You've made it through those challenges. Once you begin to identify what those parts are, it'll help to clarify what your values are and what things you want to go forward on. How are those hopes currently happening, even a little bit? Self-efficacy questions. Can you describe your 2 or 3 hopes or areas of progress? So I recommend inside these questions that you write these down and you come back to them and you think about them. I'm going to show you an example at the end of how I use this with myself, and I'll show you some team examples also. So what this is a different way to go about it. This is what's called this is from a 360 feedback. I use a tool called Lmap, which is a leadership multi-rater assessment of personality. This is a circumgraph. It's a circular graph. And this actually is, this actually is my responses to when I ask for feedback. So what you see over here in this circle is how I view myself. So I'm looking at these 13 different traits. And the reason that I did this, and when we're coaching together, you don't have to do a 360. There's no need for it. I just want to show you an example of looking at how we view self versus others and ways kind of capture values. So also being thoughtful that the way you view yourself, hence a self view, oftentimes is more negative than the other view. So this is kind of how I view myself based upon, I had 9 raters that gave me feedback. This is how the raters viewed me. And there's a difference here. And so as I looked at this and I began to go through those questions I shared with you earlier, what are my hopes? What do I value? How will others see me doing these things? How can I amplify and dampen these pieces personally? I began to kind of say, hey, these people here are seeing something different. What are they seeing different? And they gave me some pretty harsh feedback. And the caring, critical feedback I got helped me determine, identify certain parts that weren't being effective, certain parts of my life and my values that I wasn't actually living. It's good to sort of say, it's great to say, I value my family and wife. But the reality is, show me your calendar. Are you spending time with your family and wife? It's great to say, hey, I value customer service and giving my clients the best service I can. But again, if they don't see that and they're not reflecting it, that's not actually happening. So perceptual awareness is really important. So this piece here, and we're about right on time, this I'm going to also email you guys. So as we're moving through those questions and you're gathering the data and feedback, you want to start getting those parts there. So additionally, if you want to, a nice area might be, and I can email you guys some sample questions about this, email other people to get their feedback, or kind of ask folks what they see about you should change or amplify or dampen. This is taken from a guy named Marshall Goldsmith. Marshall Goldsmith is a well-known executive coach and leadership person in my field. He's written several books, and I like this part. It's called The Wheel of Change. So I'm going to email you a longer article on this. I'm going to walk through it. So in the Wheel of Change, we have essentially 4 different areas, right? So we have these parts, and you'll see it aligns with what I'm saying. And so as you're thinking about what you value, what you want to do, we'll work through these questions. And the first part normally is, what do you want to create? So create is adding or inventing. Create is saying, if I'm looking at my behaviors and values and I want to do these certain things, what new steps do I have to put in my life to get these things done? So I'll use a personal example. I want to work more on creating more online content and being able to kind of broaden my geographical reach to clients. Hence, I'm now doing these webinars. I'm making a bunch of online contents. I'm working through webinars while I know I may not be very good at them to get better at them, to create new content to help me live my values and help my clients. That's a creating piece. On this end over here, right, we have eliminating. These are things you want to get rid of or kind of eradicate or reduce. It's important to have that because, again, you can't have everything. And I tend to take a negative a negative view on strength-based stuff, because if you just build your strengths, you're not focusing on the areas of weakness you got to fill in. We all have weaknesses. We all have things that are not strong. We all have things we got to build. The analogy I use, it's like if you're a bodybuilder and you just do bicep curls and get huge biceps, but you have scrawny legs. You have to also figure out what things do I want to get rid of. And part of eliminating might be negative family members, bad connections, time wasters. So when I first did this, I realized a lot of my time is being wasted on social media and other kind of things that weren't actually adding to my values. So I eliminated a lot of my social media and some of my time reading books. I love reading books. I eliminated reading books to focus more time on my family and spend time with my kids, because I said that was important to me. Accepting, this is what sort of things do I have to accept or just make peace with? So if I choose to accept that I talk pretty fast and stutter sometimes, I can work on that, or I can just kind of say, that's part of who I am, I have to work on that. My favorite accepting example, and this is a corporate example, I was coaching a CEO from Seattle, highly successful individual, I think he was a banker, and he wrote down that he has to accept that he will never be a professional golfer. And normally when folks are filling out the questionnaire, I don't ask questions about their feedback, but they accept, like I just take it as it is, ask them questions and accept it. At the end of our coaching agreement, I came back to him, let's call him Mark. And I said, Mark, normally I don't ask this, but I'm curious. You wrote down that I have to accept I'll never be a professional golfer. What was the reason behind that? And he said, hey, Mike, you know what? My wife was mad at me. I wasn't spending time with my family. I was away every weekend. And I put down in here that's important to me. One of my values is my family and my children. And I realized that I was golfing during all my free time. So I had to accept that I'll never be a professional golfer to spend time with my wife. My wife was going to leave me. She was angry with me. So I had to accept that I'm not going to be a professional golfer. And if I actually value time with my family, spend time with my family. And I thought, oh, that's a good example. Preserve, this is also really important. These are things you want to keep. There are certain things that differentiate you or make you special. You have to figure out what parts do I want to preserve. So as you're thinking about your values and your behaviors, you'll see in a second, I'm going to ask you to think about what kind of new behaviors or actions you want to create, what new things do I want to put into my life, what things do I want to eliminate, meaning what things do I want to get rid of or kind of decrease or stop doing. Another early on behavior of mine in elimination was biting my nails. I've eliminated that mostly from my life. What things do you have to accept are just part of what it is, and what do you want to preserve? And as you're going through this process, you're crafting what your values are. So the next step is to answer these questions. And there's a lot of question sheets, but it's a work in progress, meaning you try to create your baseline. So you see here, a behavior I choose to create or add is, and you'd answer that question. How will others notice this behavior change? Again, this is thinking about how will others see this taking place? How will I notice that this behavior change? The same thing with preserve or enhance, eliminate, and accept. And each question has the, what do I want to do? How will others notice this? I want to pause because sometimes people choose to skip the how will others notice this change. I want to say that's probably the most important piece to have in there. If you say you want to be better at listening, you can make an effort to be better at listening, but if nobody feels you or nobody sees you improve your listening, the behavior doesn't stick. So talk about what others will see will enable you to figure out how they're seeing that piece. A word I use for that in leadership training is called extrospection, meaning you have introspection, you're looking internally, how do I feel about this? I say you have to look at what we call extrospection or external, extrospection to say, how will others notice me doing this and how will they react when I do these things? That part will help you figure out what to do based upon your change in your value systems. So one thing you have to consistently be thoughtful about is how do we bring this idea together? So now you've gone through the basic framework of identifying what your values are. That can come from the 360 feedback. And the 360 feedback, you get comments and feedback. You can just do it yourself, meaning reach out to people and figure those things out. Most of us can do that piece, but you have to get some external feedback from folks to hear the piece. Next part is you have to actually respect that feedback. So I'll give you an example. I was doing a coaching assignment with a doctor inside a hospital. and he rated himself really high in his teamwork skills and listening skills. He felt as if he was the best listener and the best team member ever. His feedback came back from, we had 23 folks give him feedback. We created a simple survey, and the feedback rated him low on listening and teamwork by everybody else. This doctor, in his self-awareness, felt he was a great team member. Nobody else thought that. Bad listening skills, bad team member skills. At first, he rejected it. He kind of said to me, he goes, Mike, they don't know what they're talking about. They're totally wrong. They don't like me. They're out to get me. And I said, well, you're a doctor, right? He goes, yes. I said, if 23 folks that you identified, that you chose, I didn't choose them, you picked them, they're your sample size, give feedback to say that you're not a good listener, do you think they're all lying and out to get you? I said, if 23 doctors tell you a diagnosis is bad or a person is sick, you have to accept that. And he took a little bit and he goes, I guess I have to accept that and respect that people gave me the feedback. Now I know that feedback can hurt and it's not always helpful or wanted. Be thoughtful about it. We tell folks when you're getting feedback, you want to find what we call caring critics. People who you know respect you enough to give you critical feedback and they still care about you. You have to listen, and it hurts, but listen, and then from enabling, make a change. So these are my central pieces. I thought it'd be helpful to share those with you guys and talk about what mine are. Number one is, increase work with current and past clients, identify new unique opportunities for progress through strengthening ODMC of my company, organization developed by my Cardis, outreaching content, innovate and develop new or unique ways to improve client conditions and support the client to be seen as heroes of their work. Last part is be the best dad and husband I can be through kindness, teamwork, doing my best. And you'll see these in my mind, and you know, you're gonna make your own. I just want to give you my examples. Are three things that I say, hey, you know what? As a person, as a Mike Cardis, these are things I value. And then I kind of say, am I doing these things? What sort of parts can I create? What can I eliminate? What can I accept? What can I preserve to ensure that I'm living and moving towards these three values? So I answer these questions. I'll keep more with that. And then this is what I create. I'm going to slow down and spend probably 10 minutes on this and talk more about this. This is what we call a daily check-in question matrix. So once this webinar is done, I'm going to email all of you my sample Excel spreadsheet. I'll show it to you and show how I do this. So from these questions, be able to create how others notice, preserve, eliminate, accept. I create, did I do my best statements? And this is where you as an individual have to come in. And so the did I do my best actually came from work I was doing inside a law firm. The law firm was using what's called a Gallup Q12. Gallup Q12 is an employee engagement matrix, employee engagement sort of scoring process that were being used. And one of the questions on the employee engagement matrix is, do I have a best friend at work? And in the law firm, they scored low on that. And the partner was like, Mike, reality is these folks are lawyers. The reality is they're just not friendly people. And having friends at work doesn't matter. So I score low on this. And he said to me, he goes, where is the individual accountability? So if you, do I have a best friend at work? The question is, are you trying to be friendly? If you're not trying to be friendly at work, you can't expect folks to be your best friends. And I thought that's a very good point. And so how do we begin to shift the discussion with you as an individual to say, am I making an effort to do these things? As opposed to saying, is my boss giving me clear guideline and direction? It's saying, am I setting goals for myself that I can move forward on? It's an action-based question that's present tense, and it's helpful. So you see these questions here, I'll walk through them quickly. Did I do my best to set clear goals? Every day, at the end of every day, I rate myself on these things. Did I do my best to make progress towards goal achievements? Knowing I may set good goals, but the reality is the day may get blown to smithereens, and suddenly I don't get things done. Did I do my best to find meaning? Was the day meaningful to me? Did it mean something? Did I do my best to be happy? This also falls back in the idea of saying, yes, your employer and the environment they set for you should be conducive to happiness. I think happiness at workplace is a great thing. But on the other end, if that's not going to happen for you, you have to make an effort amongst your individual self to make a happy place for yourself? Did I do things to make myself be happier that day? Did I do my best to build positive relationships? Did I do my best to be fully engaged? These top 6 questions are kind of what I call standard questions. These are questions I have everybody kind of work on and fill out. These are things you have total control over. These are ones that I use personally. Did I do my best to create intentional, slower pause points with others? Did I do my best to listen deeply and eliminate my need to respond? Did I do my best to support other people's smartness and highlight their knowledge? Did I do my best to eliminate my need to impress others? Did I do my best to ask more questions, understand the context for moving forward? Did I do my best to support someone else to be seen as a hero of their work or team? Did I do my best to work out and sweat? Did I do my best to be kind? Did I do my best to connect with others in a face-to-face manner? Did I do my best to show my love and respect to Christine? Christine's my wife. Did I do my best to create ODMC, my company, products and services? So you see on these bottom several questions here, those are things in line with my values, right? Helping my clients, getting more work, supporting my family. So I said, hey, you know, the reality is if I want clients to be seen as heroes, I have to be more engaged in what they're doing. I have to support their efforts. So I identified things that will help me live my values to support my clients. And you'll see here on this part, every day I measure it. Here's how we measure it on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 meaning it's a personal subjective metric, but 1 meaning I didn't give it sufficient effort, I gave it my worst effort, and 10 meaning I gave it full effort. So by doing this every day, I can create a way to look at and to self-check myself every day, creating small steps. And you'll see some days are good, some days are bad, some days fall apart, some days stay together. Ultimately, it's okay. But in my mind, if I'm consistently doing these things, after a while, you create a pattern. And so I'm going to show you quickly as I stop this shared screen. I'm going to go to a different shared screen now and show you my actual coaching chart that I use, and then we'll go to the questions in a little bit. So if you can see this, these are my daily updates, and I've been scoring myself in this one since January 1st. I've missed some days, but these are my questions. And what happens as I'm coaching people over a long period of time is the questions begin to kind of almost become like a mantra or something you repeat. So as I'm working with a client, I may recognize that I am trying too hard to impress them, which can make folks turn off to my consulting. So then I say to myself, how do I shut down and make sure they're being seen as a hero in their work today? So in real time, the more you do this, if I do it every day, it takes me 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, every day to kind of complete this. So I'll write down the date, I'll go through the numbers, 1 being minimal effort, 10 being maximum effort, and I'll just check in and I look for patterns. It's a quick, easy way to do the process. And by doing it, you're moving towards your goals. But realize that the overall objective of the values is not to get better over time. It's just to become more mindful of it so you can catch yourself and kind of go back in the process. Here's a rather confusing sort of graph that I use to look at sort of trends. So you see I crash here. And one time early on, I realized I was crashing on the weekends. So on the weekends, everything was kind of falling down pretty quick. So I work on that. So I'm gonna get to the final couple of slides and then we'll have a little time for discussion. So, and you'll see it falls back to these pieces: create, accept, eliminate, and change. So this is one thing that we think about and how I use this. And this is what we do with it. You know, you have to check on your efforts. And because change takes between 15 to 18 months of purposeful practice. Habits have to be checked in every day. And also accept that some days you're going to move forward, some days you're going to fall backwards. But if you keep falling backwards in the same metrics, so if I keep scoring in the red on certain metrics, I'm going to stop and ask myself, is something going on? Is there a trend? Do I actually value this thing? Do I have to change what I'm doing? It's a way for me every day to kind of say, based upon the craziness that's happening outside of my life, I can control these things and make myself feel better about that. So there's ways to check in. I'm not recommending these, but with some coaching clients, here's what I do. Literally, I call some folks every day. So I have about, right now, 5 people that are at this level of coaching, and I call them every single day. So I'll say, hey, Sisha, it's Mike. She goes, hey, Mike. And I'll say, hey, we use shared Google Forms. Open your Google form. Let's walk through your numbers. And she'll say, okay, Mike, 1, 3, 6, 2, 5, 8, 9, 10. Whatever she says is fine. But just knowing I'm going to call them every day creates accountability to the process. And typically, it gets annoying. I get that. But I call them on the weekends too. So by calling them every day, you know someone's going to call you and ask you about the things you value to check you. To say, am I doing these things? Am I not doing these things? If you choose to not do it, that's cool. It's not my choice, but you got to be thoughtful about that. Another way is weekly coaching meeting. I recommend if you do this, you have someone that you meet with, like accountability groups, internal structure groups, family systems, those sort of things. Team meetings. I'm going to show you in a second an example of how we use the same process with a team of 5 people to work through the same way to kind of figure out what behaviors do they want to work at as a team. You and your manager or your direct report spend time going through this every day. That creates a high level of effort. But I've also seen in one team I worked with, an executive team, the executive team actually all did this. And then they met as a team every week to kind of just talk about what's going well and what's not going well. And that creates such a high level of trust amongst that team to share areas of vulnerability, areas of updates. And by having that cadence, every week we're going to talk about these things, it created more trust and more discussion inside the team. So what makes this work? Right? It's the idea of you controlling what you wish to change and the effort you put into it. No one else is telling you what to change. I'm not out there saying you got to be a better listener or you have to delegate tasks more effectively. That's not my job. It's not really anyone's job. It's your job to figure out what you want to change and what you want to enhance. It's your job to say, I value these things. If work is not giving me these values, I have to find them elsewhere. I can keep doing my job, keep doing my work. I got to figure ways to make things better. Or if I value family time, am I doing those things? You figure out how much effort you put into it. At one point, this is funny, I was doing a leadership class and somebody asked me, they said, what if I'm just BSing the numbers and the results? My response is, they're just BSing yourself. Like no one else sees it. If you choose to lie about your effort, that's your choice to lie about your efforts. Like that's your choice. Taking a daily practice of 5 to 10 minutes to read and self-score your efforts creates a different a mindset. Because normally what we do is we set goals or value things, you read a report, and then you kind of let it go. By having a self-check-in mechanism every day that you spend a little bit of time for, it makes the steps a little bit smaller. It also makes the course correction a little easier. So if you're finding things aren't there, knowing that someone beside you is going to ask you about your leadership behavior and change keeps the accountability there. Each behavior is active and something you can change. It does not depend upon somebody else or for someone to do something to you. This is important. And again, like I said earlier on, I believe in organizations and I believe in the organization creating an environment for you to be your best self. But on the other end, there's that polarity, the paradox of the individual. So you have to also figure out what things can I control inside my environment to make me feel better, to make me do the best. In some workplace environments, I'm talking to some of you right now, I know are pretty toxic and furloughs are happening, layoffs are happening, and there's a lot of instability in the market. So you got to stop and kind of say, how do I keep my head about this? Because your mental health and your self-care by developing things you value to ensure you're doing those things is really important. The organization may not do it for you, or they might. That's really nice, but not everyone's going to do it for you. Doing this as a team or with a friend creates a shared model and process for having language. So even the wheel of change, eliminate, accept, preserve, creates a shared word or frame for this. That's my example again. Here's a quick example of my messy handwriting, but also how we did this with the team. I'm going to show you the examples later on. But we got a team together. This is a group of landscape architects from a small company. And as they were doing this, we actually wrote down, I'll show you the questions in a second. We actually wrote down, sorry, my highlighter here. What things do they want to create? What do they want to preserve, eliminate, and accept? And we just wrote it down on the whiteboard. The next slide are actually their answers. And this was done as a team. So the team put this thing together And the 5 people on the team had the exact same Excel spreadsheets. And at the end of every day, the executive director would say, all right, spreadsheet's out, let's go. And they spent 5 minutes at the end of every day just saying their numbers, reading the question, saying their numbers, and that was it. No deep discussion, no, why do you feel that way? What can we do? It was just discussion, numbers, moving on. It created the cadence. Because an important thing about behavior change or about any habit is you have to create what we call heuristics, rules of thumb, or we call cadences. Behavior moves through cadence. So those of you in there who are part of the military or part of any like military organization, cadence and habit and repetition is a big part of developing behavior change. Healthy or not healthy, it's also the reason why those of us who go to church, if you're religious, that's why we repeat hymns. That's why we have call and repeat processes. Psychologically, as humans, we need to have habits built into our day to allow us to move through the sequence. The more we have to think about it, I think thinking is important, but the more we think without a cadence or habit to kind of lean into, the more we forget things. So what this method does, it gives you a structure. A scaffold, we call it a scaffold or a backbone to stand on top of to say, how can I fix these things in my values and the process? And that was the overview. I mean, literally it's kind of going through how can you take this process and compare where you were yesterday to where you are today and individually start creating new goals and new structures to move forward. So I'm going to sort of drop out of the screen a second and we'll do some discussion or question and answer. If you have any questions, you can start putting them in the Q&A box or you can ask me. I will talk a little bit more about this in a second. Let me stop the shared screen. And thank you guys. So I'm going to go into questions in 1 second. I want to say this. This method, I've gone through a lot of variations and I've tried this. Normally with my questions and folks that I'm coaching, I recommend they go back through the values questions and then go back through the what will I create, what will I accept, what will I preserve, what will I eliminate, and then change it every 2 to 3 months. Because what you're doing is you're reiterating the process, you're going over and over again. And by having that backbone and that discussion to get there, you will then be able to kind of figure out what do I want to do. Because again, at the end of the day, you have to be accountable for your change and for what you want to do. You got to take actions to get things done. So I'm going to go into some questions now. If there are more questions, feel free to ask me. Like I said, I'm going to send you guys all the content. So I see there is a question here. You stated high accountability is high blank. You stated high accountability and high blank is the best scenario for change. High accountability and high emotional or support, I call it community support, communities or groups around you. So if we have, imagine it as if it's, I can't draw, like a 2x2 matrix, right? So we have accountability being low, accountability being high, and then we have community being low, you by yourself, and community being high, others around you. What we found is if we have high community, high folks who expect you to do things, who need results from you, and high accountability, then you'll be more driven to make things happen. An example in the lower quadrant of the low accountability, do it by yourself, that is a lot of the self-help work that we do. I also make a joke. That's also all those webinars I paid for that are sitting inside my inbox that I'll never get to. Why? I paid for them. If I want to do the work, I will, but no one's asking me to work through those things. So the structure that I'm sharing with you guys helps if you have somebody to kind of give you feedback and to push off you with. So you have to have others around you who will give you feedback and help you out with the process. Funny, in my own way, the reason that I kind of keep updating my self-change charts is I know I'm going to share them with folks like you. I want to make sure that I'm showing examples. I'm actually living the process and getting things done. Oh, we got another question here. How do I go about doing this with a partner or working together with somebody? Well, it's a good question. So one way to do that is to, find somebody in the organization or that you're close to that can help you go through the process and answer the questions, and then create a check-in call. A way to create the check-in call is, again, to sort of say, I'm going to call you every day at 7 o'clock. You're going to call me. let's just talk through our responses together. It's helpful. And I'm going to say the most helpful part again is having the methodology to go back to your shared Excel documents, go through your screen, go through those questions and answer them. Because again, you have to have that cadence. And the research bears out that if you want to change a habit, better at listening, spend more time with your family, or even create new products or new sales processes or new behaviors at work, it takes 13 to 15 months of purposeful practice to make it happen. And you have to get it in there again to take care of things. So are there any more questions? If you have anything else, feel free to type it in there. I'll give you guys about time to think it through. So while you're thinking of questions, if no more is there, it's okay. I'm going to say this. So what I'm going to do is I will take this recording. I will send it back to you relatively soon. Oh, I got a question. Okay, good. So here's one. Have any of your clients used a daily check-in matrix along with a journal? Journaling thoughts and notes about the matrix can be helpful. Yeah, so I like the journaling idea for yourself. If it's helpful, then great. Again, it's figuring out what support pieces can you put around it that can be there to help. So for example, like if you think journaling is helpful, then journal. Personally, I just like kind of having a quick way to get to it. And my concern always is if the person does not like journaling, so they have to choose their own, the individual has to choose their own process to make the change happen. I cannot dictate it to them how to make change happen. You have to figure out what works best for you. And so some people, the Excel spreadsheet is enough. Some people want Excel spreadsheet, journaling, plus Mike calling them every day. That may be enough. So it's figuring out what works. So yes, some clients have used journals, but what I found, and this is just anecdotal, the majority of folks will start journaling things and then they stop in 3 or 4 weeks. So it can be helpful. And so I say, if it works for you, then by all means, do it. Someone else said, I thought I heard it takes about 30 days to make change happen. Again, the research varies, but I'm thinking about harder changes like quitting smoking, or like, here's another good example. So I was coaching a gentleman inside a PR agency, a marketing PR agency. And the feedback that he got from his boss was that he tends to cut clients off during client meetings. So you're a PR marketing guy, you're selling things, suddenly you're cutting people off. So we did the same process. We made a matrix. He determined he wanted to work on that listening better. And again, it took consistent effort. So 13 to 15 months, meaning that it's now locked in to where you don't have to think about it so much. It just happens almost automatically. Let's see, I have a couple more quick. Your charting is intense. If you're not good with doing the charting Excel sheet, what about reflectively doing this without charting? Yeah, so I have 2 thoughts about that. One is this. One is you have to figure out what works best for you. And I like that idea. My second part is, though, with the chart being there, if you don't want to do the charting, that's okay. But I found with the clients I've worked with over the past 3 years, the majority of them will do the charting. The majority of them will do the charting and they'll stop the charting once our contract is over because they just don't want to do it anymore. And that's okay. I accept that. Personally, the charting helps me kind of go, all right, I do these things. And it takes me literally 2 minutes a day because you kind of go through it and just give it a quick number. If you think too much about it, that's okay. But the more you do it, the more you create that cadence. So if folks can do it being reflectively, if you can kind of create 3 or 4 questions. So another example is using solution focus is just sort of saying things like, you know, based upon my values, what went well today? What went well? What do I want to do more of tomorrow? What do I want to do less of tomorrow? And you can just write those things down. What went well? What do I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? Another technique, and I'll email it to the group, is called distinctive working well, small improvements. And we do this with teams sometimes, and sometimes individuals. I'll have them write down almost every day or every week what was distinctive or special about their day, what stood out that was unique, what stood out that was distinctive or special about them in the day, what worked relatively well, what things went pretty well you don't want to change, you want to preserve or accept, and what small improvements can I take? And from doing that, you're creating that habit or the repetition. So it's important to create the repetition of the habits. Someone else said, a great investment of my time today. Thanks, Mike. Oh, thank you. So I think the question about charting is also important. You have to figure out what works for you. And to be honest with you, some people don't like the matrix and they kind of get it done. Some folks do like the matrix. So in closing, I'm going to say this. This is one of my softer parts of coaching and development. I'm a strong believer in the environment and the organization supporting you as an individual. But I also recognize that as an individual, you have to take some accountability to make things better inside your environments. So you can consistently kind of whine and complain about how bad the environment is. I get that. And when I say that, it brings me back to a quote that my father told me. So quick story, my father was a principal and superintendent of schools. He passed away in 2006 for very many years. My mother was a labor union president for the Public Employees Federation. She was a regional director, Region 9, Public Employees Federation, which is a union out of Westchester, Dutchess, Putnam County. And I remember at one point, there was some discussion of unionization happening inside one of my father's schools. And my mother being pro-union, she was a very strong advocate, was a labor union, a regional director from 1972, 35 years. So she was very strong in advocacy, having a voice, sort of being heard, taking it straight to power. I mean, she was a real like kick you in the balls kind of lady. And I mean that respectfully, I loved her. And I remember like they were debating over the union stuff and she left and my father looked at me and he kind of shook his head and he loved my mom very much, but he's like, Mike, if you want to make a difference, you have to kind of learn the rules and work with the system. He's like, you can be on the outside screaming and yelling all you want, but eventually you got to figure out what can help change the system from the inside and what structural changes can you make? How can you sort of shift those things? Being on the outside screaming things to change sometimes makes a difference, but it just takes longer. And I hear both sides inside my head on my mother and father at the same time. My mom saying, smash them, take them down, bring them in there, show them what they're doing is wrong, and attack. And my father, the psychologist, telling me, take a deep breath, work in the system, learn the rules, play with the rules, and make the change from the inside out. So it's always a hard paradox there. But I think this tool will give you some self-efficacy, some ways to support yourself, and some ways to also say, what can I change inside my own realm? So what I'm going to do following this webinar, probably by tomorrow or tonight, I'm going to send you the recording. I'm going to send you all the information. I'll send you my Excel spreadsheet blanked out, and you can sort of fill it out. The colors are all auto-populated. If you want to work on the questions and send me the Excel spreadsheet and you want some feedback, by all means, you can email me or call me. Again, my name is Mike Cardis from Organization Development by Mike Cardis. Thank you so much.